To protect the public's health in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is taking place remotely. Pursuant to the Illinois Opens Meeting Act, I have determined that holding this meeting in person is not practical or prudent. The city of Chicago remains subject to the governor's disaster proclamation due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the disease continues to be a threat, especially to the unvaccinated and people with certain health conditions. We are therefore having this meeting remotely this month. This meeting is open to the public via video and audio conference and is being carried live by CAN TV. Members of the public are on mute in order to reduce background noise and disruptions. We have a court reporter making a transcript of this meeting. In addition to police board members, we have several city officials here with us this evening. I will begin by taking attendance so it is clear who is participating in this meeting. Please say here after I read your name. Police Board Vice President Paula Wolf.
Here.
If everyone could mute, please. Police Board Member Stephen Block.
Here.
Board Member Mariley Cusack.
Here.
Board Member Nanette Doorley. I can see Nanette.
Here.
Thank you. Board Member Michael Eady.
Here.
And Board Member Jorge Montez.
Here.
Sitting in this evening in place of Superintendent Brown is Chief of Chicago Police Department's Bureau of Patrol, Brian McDermott.
Here, good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Chief Administrator of Civilian Office of Police Accountability, Andrea Kirsten.
Here.
Deputy Inspector General for Public Safety, Tabara Richardson.
Here.
Good evening. Chief of Chicago Police Department's Bureau of Internal Affairs, Yolanda Talley. Chief of the Bureau of, good evening. Chief of the Bureau of Detectives, Brendan Denahan. Executive Director of CPD's Office of Constitutional Policing and Reform, Tina Scahill.
Here, sir.
Assistant General Counsel to the Superintendent, Scott Spears.
Here.
Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, Eleanor Gottrich. And Executive Director of the Police Board, Max Caproni.
Here.
We will now proceed onto the items on the meeting agenda. We will have time at the end of the meeting for public comments. Once again, members of the public are currently on mute in order to reduce background noise and disruptions. When we get to the public comment portion of the meeting, we will unmute each speaker. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the board's regular public meeting held on November 17th?
So moved, Paula Wolf.
Second, Michael Eady.
I will now call on members of the board for their votes. Wolf,
Aye.
Block,
Aye.
Cusack,
Aye.
Doorley,
Aye.
Eady,
Aye.
Montez,
Aye.
and I vote in favor of the motion. The motion passes. The schedule of the board's regular monthly meetings for 2023 has been set and will be posted on the board's website, chicago.gov/policeboard. As in past years, the board will meet on the third Thursday of each month, and the meetings will begin at 7:30 p.m. Our next regular public meeting will be held on Thursday, January 19th at 7:30 p.m. Whether this will be an in-person meeting or a remote meeting will be determined closer to the meeting date. The police board meets in executive session to consider personnel matters and litigation. Those discussions are closed to the public as authorized by sections 2C1, 3, 4, and 11 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act. A summary of items discussed in executive sessions is posted in the minutes of the meetings on our website. Is there a motion to close future executive sessions as authorized by these sections of the Open Meeting Act?
So moved, Paula Wolf.
Second, Michael Eady.
All in favor? Wolf,
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Cusack,
Aye.
Doorley,
Aye.
Eady,
Aye.
Montez,
Aye.
and I vote in favor of the motion. The motion passes. The next agenda item is police disciplinary cases. The police board is authorized by the Open Meetings Act has considered in a closed meeting I'm sorry, give me 1 second, sorry. The Police Board, as authorized by the Open Meetings Act, has considered in a closed meeting one police disciplinary case. The board will now take final action on this case. Regarding case number 20-PB-2982, is there a motion to find Police Officer Thomas Sherry guilty of submitting false police reports regarding recovery of suspect narcotics and to discharge him from the police department?
So moved, Paula Wolf.
Second, Michael Eady.
I will now call on members of the board for their votes. Wolf,
Aye.
Block,
I vote against the motion.
Cusack,
Aye.
Edie,
Aye.
Montez,
Aye.
and I vote in favor of the motion. Voting in favor are board members Wolf, Cusack, Edie, Montez, and myself. Board member Block votes against the motion. The motion passes by a vote of 5-1. Board member Doorley recused herself from this case to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest. Is there a motion to adopt the written findings and decision and dissent that have all been reviewed by board members who participated in the case?
So moved, Paula Wolf.
Second, Michael Eady.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. The written decision in this case will be entered as of today's date and posted on the board's website. The board, as authorized by the Open Meetings Act, has considered in a closed meeting one appeal from an applicant for Chicago police officer position who has been removed from the eligibility list due to the results of a background examination. The board will now take final action on this appeal. Regarding appeal number 22AA04, is there a motion to adopt the appeals officer's findings and conclusions and recommend to affirm the decision to disqualify the applicant?
So moved, Paula Wolf.
Second, Michael Eady.
I will now call on board members for their votes. Wolf,
Aye.
Block,
Aye.
Cusack,
Aye.
Doorley,
Aye.
Edie,
Aye.
Montez,
Aye.
and I vote in favor of the motion. Voting in favor are board members Wolf, Block, Cusack, Doorley, Edie, Montez, and myself. The motion passes by a vote of 7-0. The written decision of this appeal will be entered as of today's date, sent to the parties, and posted on the board's website within 5 days. Next up, we are pleased to have with us this evening, First Assistant Cook County State's Attorney, Risa Lanier, who will be speaking about recent changes to the state's attorney search warrant policy.
Thank you very much, President Foreman, for the invitation to speak on the recent changes that our office have made to our search warrant policy. To begin, I think it's prudent to remind everyone here, although I'm sure you are aware, that there is no law, there's no statute that requires that the Cook County State's Attorney's Office review any search warrants prior to the presentation of a search warrant to a judge for approval. However, here in Cook County, like our counterparts in DuPage County, Lake County, or Will County, there has been a practice in place for decades where our law enforcement partners will present warrants to us for the purposes of reviewing those warrants to ensure that they contain probable cause and for legality purposes. Traditionally, what our office would do is receive these search warrants. We will review the documents themselves. We are not involved in the investigation at all, but we will review the documents themselves just to make sure within that document it contains information sufficient for probable cause for the granting of a search warrant. Once we reviewed the document, we would approve the document if approval was appropriate, and law enforcement would then take those documents to the judges, to the Cook County judge for approval. We are not involved in the presentation of that search warrant or any of the witnesses for the search warrant, whether it's a John Doe search warrant where someone is appearing along with a law enforcement officer in front of a judge to answer questions regarding the information contained within the search warrant, or the officer themselves. We were not and are not still involved in that process. And then once a search warrant was approved or rejected by a judge, that was the end really of our role in the review of a search warrant. 2 years ago, when the Anjanette Young raid and other bad search warrants came to light, it really prompted our office to take a look at our role in approving search warrants to determine whether or not our procedures could be tightened up, whether or not our procedures should be changed, whether or not we should still be involved, frankly, in the review of a search warrant as it is not required by statute. And over the past 2 years, our office has been working internally to answer those questions. And as a result of that, as you all know, earlier this week, we released our new search warrant procedures. They are attached to our felony review guidebook that we send to our law enforcement partners to help them when they are, to help them be prepared to answer questions posed by felony review assistant state's attorneys when they call into our office for the approval of charges or for search warrants. Within those guidelines, we also set up a new search warrant return procedure. So I'll talk a little bit first about what changes we've made to the actual review process of search warrants, and then about the search warrant return process, which is new to us, which we did not previously have in place. Regarding the search warrants themselves, again, we are not required by statute to review these warrants. However, when law enforcement does want us to review these warrants, we've set forth particular questions that law enforcement should be prepared to answer when they present a search warrant for review. So we'll do a deeper dive into their investigation just to ensure the integrity of the investigation, to ensure that they fully flushed out the information and developed the information that they put in the search warrant for the purposes of seeking this constitutional review by our office and for the development of probable cause. So for example, things that we'll be asking for that we had not asked for in the past, when a law enforcement officer presents a search warrant for review, if it's for a residence, we will be asking them to provide us proof of that particular residence by way of a picture of the door, perhaps, or any information that they have developed during their investigation that ensures, number one, that they have the right location to begin with. Number two, we're also going to be asking more probing questions about the relationship between the target of that search warrant and the residence to be searched, to ensure, again, that they've developed sufficient information during their investigation. Is there a relationship between that person, the target of the search warrant, and that particular residence? Have they lived there before? Is it a family member? And also with regards to the resident itself, who lives there? Are there children? Do we expect children to be present? So things of that nature, just again, to ensure the integrity of the investigation and that the investigation was robust, probing into the information that was provided by a confidential informant or a John Doe. Once we receive that information, if we believe that the search warrant passes constitutional muster, we will again approve those search warrants. If we believe that it does not, as in past times, we will reject those search warrants. What we are now requiring that we have not required in the past is a search warrant return to our office. So by statute, once a search warrant has been signed by a judge and a search takes place, law enforcement is required to return that search warrant to the court, or to that judge that signed it. And with that, they would include any information that they gleaned from that search. So accompanying that search warrant should be information about what was recovered, if anything was recovered, and of course, whether or not there is a prosecution initiated as a result of that search and that recovery. That's required by statute, but had not previously been required by our office. With our new search warrant procedures, we are requiring our law enforcement partners, once you present a warrant to our office, if we've signed off on that warrant, you must return that information to our office as well. This will provide stronger checks on the police and also strengthens protections of civil liberties. we will be able, based upon those returns, to determine and to include in our new data dashboard that we've built for this purpose. We will include information about whether or not the right house was hit, if anything was recovered. We'll be able to track which officers and which districts these search warrants are coming from, which neighborhoods they're coming from, what was recovered, whether or not there was resulting prosecution, whether or not the search warrant was executed in the first place. It will allow us to build up data that we then can use to review later to answer any questions about search warrants that have been presented to our office, but then allow us to also internally review our search warrant procedures. What happens on search warrants, whether or not we can identify any trends that we need to alert our law enforcement partners about. So basically this new review, and not a new review, but these new procedures will allow us to do a deeper dive into the investigation, build integrity around the search warrant process, and increase transparency for the public about what happens with these particular search warrants in our communities and what flows from that, whether it be prosecution or not.
Thank you very much. Quickly, any board members, any questions?
Yeah, this is Paula. I had a question. Did I understand you right that the search warrants that will be part of this process are only those which are voluntarily sent to your office for review? And if is the case, is there any way of collecting data about the ones which were not tendered to your office as part of your data analysis?
So yes, that is correct. These will be this search warrant review only happens when the police voluntarily sends us those search warrants. And I can tell you, I've been in this office for 22 years. I've only heard of once where a law enforcement partner has gone directly to the judge and bypassed our office for a approval of a search warrant. So that's not, I don't anticipate that happening in mass, I should say. But to answer your questions, we are not, unless a prosecution flows from a search warrant that has been approved by a judge, if they bypass our office, we will not know whether or not a search warrant was approved by the judge. So we will be unable to collect that data.
Are there any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Good luck. Hopefully the team won. They beat the rivals, hopefully. Thank you so much. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays to all of you.
As a follow-up to some public comments and discussion at last month's board meeting, we asked Tina Scahill to discuss CPD's special order on the Firearm Concealed Carry Act. Ms. Scahill.
Thank you. I'm going to try to share my screen. You let me know, Max, if I can do that.
In the meantime, we'll come back to this.
Sure.
That Chief McDermott will ask for the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening to all police board members and community members. Chicago Police Department's mission is to serve our communities and protect the lives, rights, and property of all people in Chicago. This year, the men and women of CPD have lived that mission. Year to date, homicides are down 15%, while both shootings and shooting victims have declined 20%. There have been 872 less shootings this year than in the same point during 2021. Across the city, the homicide clearance rate is 50%, and the Bureau of Detectives has cleared 337 homicides so far this year. Our officers have also brought the total number of firearms recovered to 12,334, which means that we've already surpassed the number of firearms recovered in 2021, which was 12,088 guns taken off the street. This year's number also includes more than 1,000 assault weapons. Compared to 2021, we've seen a 52% increase in the recovery of these types of firearms. Gun violence is a national issue. In Chicago, we're engaging residents and businesses in every neighborhood. We've also added more resources and personnel across our districts and in our transit system. On the CTA, specialized units regularly conduct drills and outdoor roll calls and are on patrol around the clock. Month to date, overall transit crime is down 32% and fell 42% compared to 2019. The department also strengthened the vehicle hijacking task force and our organized retail crime task force. Chicago has seen a 9.9% decrease in vehicle hijackings compared to 2021, and officers have made 17.5% more motor vehicle related arrests this year. The organized retail crime task force has cleared more than 100 cases by arrest and has recovered stolen merchandise worth millions of dollars. CPD works with both community members and local businesses to promote safety. In addition to hosting numerous community conversations in town halls, we launched our monthly Conversations with a Commander series this year. No matter the time, situation, or location, the men and women of CPD work tirelessly and serve fearlessly. That's why officer wellness and recruitment will always be priorities for the department. We're investing in services, facilities, and full-scale recruitment efforts. We want to ensure officers and their families have access to the support they need whenever they need it. And we want the next generation of our officers to thrive in the profession and stand prepared in our communities. So far this year, we fired 853 recruits, in which more than 70% are people of color and nearly 1/3 are women. As we look toward next year, Chicago Police Department will keep working to make our department stronger and the city safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I just want to follow up on one thing that really it struck me: the assault weapons. I think that we hear about assault weapons on the news, and we think about it as the mass shootings that take place someplace. But this is something that you all are seeing, obviously, on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, we are, Gian. It's not too uncommon to see when we have these shootings and homicides to see rifle casings on the scenes, and that attributes to our increase in these rifle recoveries.
Okay, so I think that while this is probably outside of your direct control, I think this is one of those places where we kind of need the police department, the police board, and residents of the city to really speak with our lawmakers and really push this at a higher level, at a federal level. This is wreaking havoc, and to hear those numbers, really, really amazing. Thank you very much. We'll go back to Ms. Scahill.
Thank you for this opportunity to go over Chicago Police Department Special Order 06-0502. At your request, this is concerning the Firearm Concealed Carry Act. The next slide, please, Max. So this directive covers several items. One, it provides an overview of the law. Firearm Concealed Carry Act is an Illinois statute, actually 430, Illinois Compiled Statute 66. It also delineates the processing procedures for those people that are arrested by the Chicago Police Department, for violating the act. It also explains in a directive how firearms will be inventoried. And lastly, what it does, it designates specific personnel responsible in the Chicago Police Department for reviewing applications for a concealed carry license. The next slide, please, Max. So I think what's important is people realize that all of the Chicago Police Department directives are publicly available on our website. You can find that again at directives.chicagopolice.org, or if you just put in keyword search Chicago Police Department directives, it will take you to that site. Next slide, please, Max. And so what was brought up on the last meeting was what do we expect of our members? Well, the directive itself communicates the policies and procedures surrounding enforcement of that act that I mentioned previously. It is a state law. And so it explains to our members, what their responsibilities are and how they're supposed to carry those out. But I think, again, it's important to remember that it's not just one directive, one statute, one ordinance. These are very complex issues and every incident is different. And so even when assessing, whether or not a directive is in play, we also recognize there could be other directives, other statutes, other ordinances that also impact the proper procedures for that surrounding that incident. And as is stated previously, how are we trained and how we train our officers? Well, officers are expected to enforce this statute as they are expected to enforce all statutes and ordinances constitutionally and safely. Next slide, please, Max. So as I started out by saying that all of our directives, not just this one on firearms concealed carry act, but all of our directives are available. And it's important that we get recommendations, suggestions, and feedback from the public. And when you go on that site, you'll see information about that. But if you want to comment on this policy or any policy, you may do so by emailing our research and development unit at rnd@chicagopolice.org. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take those. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Next, Chief Kirsten, we will go for your presentation, please.
Thank you, President Foreman. I appreciate the opportunity to be before this board this evening. As I usually do, I'm going to report out on the statistics from last month and then talk a little bit about this recently released, actually released today, IMR 6 consent decree report. So for the actual stats from last month, COPA received 410 complaints and notifications. Of those cases, 103 of them were retained under COPA's jurisdiction. 29% of the cases under COPA's jurisdiction this month were once again, the highest complaint category was Fourth Amendment or improper search or seizure violations. Last month, we had 7 officer-involved shooting notifications. We concluded 4 officer-involved shooting cases. And then a total of 95 cases were closed, which had 16% of those that included sustained findings. We also had 2 different video releases in the month of November, both from officer-involved shootings that had taken place previously. And then we had 7 different community engagement events. And as usual, we tried to, our approach to community engagement is always inclusive of educational opportunities and settings. So we were present at UIC College Prep and also Intrinsic Schools Networking Night. We were also in a faith-based meeting with the Leaders Network on the West Side. We were also at Nobel Neighbors, Wilbur Wright City Colleges, and then had a unique opportunity myself to participate in serving a Thanksgiving dinner to our newly welcomed migrants, predominantly from Venezuela. It was a group of almost 300 of them that the city has welcomed as part of the efforts that all of the city departments have lended resources to ensure that these families traveling great distances to come to this country and often being bused from ports of entry along border towns have places to go and resources to access. So it was a powerful opportunity.
It looks like the Zoom gods are not on our side today. Let's see if Ephraim, are you around, Ephraim?
Independent monitoring team released their IMR 6 report, which details compliance that was gained for all of the entities that are under the umbrella of the consent decree, which is obviously the police department, COPA, the Inspector General's office, and the city at large. So what I think is important is first to explain that this reporting period has a lag time. So this is actually evaluating progress that was made from January 1st of 2022 through June 30th of 2022. And the report is bulky and we haven't completely absorbed all of it yet. So I'm giving you sort of a high level preview. It's over 1,000 pages long. There were certainly significant significant gains made sort of all across the board, including gains made by CPD, but I'm going to talk about COPA's progress, and I can report that being the first of 3 tiers of compliance that you have to reach under this consent decree. We're now at 40% of secondary compliance and 23% of operational compliance. So this is a tremendous uptick for us and kind of continuing on this trajectory towards hopefully reaching our full goal of complete compliance within the original 5-year timeline. So we're excited about the progress, and perhaps even more excited by some of the comments that are in the report, acknowledgement of the sort of thoughtful and methodical approach that we're taking in our consent decree compliance efforts. And then I can just say, as recently as this week, I mentioned that this reporting period is a lag, right? So we're actually concluding right now the time period that will be evaluated in the next report, IMR 7. And so as recently as this week, we were continuing to deliver really critical consent decree trainings to our staff on major incident responses, as well as fact gathering, which kind of lays the groundwork for how we go about collecting evidence and information in all of our investigations, and major case response, sets the rules and parameters for how we respond to scenes of officer-involved shootings or fatal vehicle pursuits, et cetera. So 2 really big, important areas that govern a lot of the work that we do. And we had the opportunity to, having already reached preliminary compliance by developing those policies, now hopefully submit and get secondary compliance next time around for having developed and delivered quality training content to make sure that the policies that we're establishing become rooted in the culture of our investigative agency. So excited about that progress for COPA, but also for the city as it continues to move forward, including CPD and making gains on our consent decree compliance path. So just wanted to share about that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that was actually a good reminder. You can read the monitor team report. It's at cpdmonitoringteam.com, cpdmonitoringteam.com. I was actually just taking a look at it before we started the meeting. It is bulky, but if you want to get a good understanding of kind of where the city is in terms of making the progress, it's a good document for you to take a look at. And the monitoring team does actually have community meetings, and so members of the public, there are definitely opportunities for your participation. Thank you very much to all who presented this evening. Earlier today, the board, as required by the Illinois Open Meetings Act, met and considered minutes and recordings of all past closed meetings to determine whether the need for confidentiality still exists. The board members unanimously agreed that when it comes to that, it continues to be necessary to keep confidential recordings of its past closed meetings and portions of the minutes. As previously announced, the board makes publicly available portions of its closed meeting minutes. These minutes are included in the blue book that is posted on the board's website in advance of each public meeting. The next item on the agenda is the proposed policy regarding the adoption of CPD rules and regulations. The Municipal Code of Chicago grants the police board the power and duty to adopt the rules and regulations for governance of the Chicago Police Department. At last month's meetings, we announced and posted on our website a draft policy that includes provisions to make sure that stakeholders and the general public receive advance notice of any proposed new or revised CPD rules and regulations, and that there are multiple opportunities for comments and questions. The draft policy also includes community outreach and opportunities for meetings to discuss the proposals. We did not receive any public comments on the draft policy. Is there a motion to adopt the draft policy that was issued with the agenda as of tonight's meeting that has been posted on the board's website as required by the Illinois Open Meetings Act?
So moved, Paula Wolf.
Second, Michael Eady.
Thank you. I will now call on members of the board for their votes. Wolf,
Aye.
Husak,
Aye.
Gurley,
Aye.
Eady,
Aye.
Montez,
Aye.
and I vote in favor of the motion. The motion passes. The superintendent has requested the board's permission to solicit funds to cover the cost of hosting the department's annual ceremony and luncheon in May 2023. The most recent awards luncheon was held last May, and the board received a report of funds raised and spent. Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's request, subject to the board's receiving an accounting of funds raised and spent following the May 2023 event?
So moved, Paula Wolf.
Second, Michael Eady.
I will now call on members of the board for their votes. Wolf,
Aye.
Husak,
Aye.
Dooley,
Aye.
Edie,
Aye.
Montez,
Aye.
and I vote in favor of the motion. The motion passes. I will now call upon members of the public who signed up in advance to speak. To make sure we have time to hear from all speakers, there's a 2-minute time limit on comments. Those calling in, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. Our first speaker is Corey Deuel.
Hey, President Foreman, thank you for that. As he mentioned, I'm Corey Dooley here representing the Chicago Youth Council. A quick update with the Youth Council. Our council will be hosting a 3v3 basketball tournament to foster community building, registering young people to vote, and to promote civic engagement, as well as inform community members about the roles and responsibilities of elected officials. For more information, you can email the Chicago Youth Council at gmail.com. This event is being scheduled for January 29th from 12 to 4 p.m. And the location is tentative, but we are looking at hosting this event at Michelle Clark High School. We do have 2 meetings upcoming at the Chicago Police Department headquarters. The first meeting actually will be tomorrow regarding Chicago Police Department interactions with peoples that have disabilities. Our second meeting date has not been yet confirmed, but this meeting will be in regards to information on search warrant policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Nija Mullings. If you can press *6. Nija Mullings. All right. Our next speaker, Krista Noel. Ms. Noel, if you can press *6.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, okay. I wanted to say to the state's attorney's office real quick that not only do they need to know what's recovered from raids, but they need to know what's taken, as in people's money. They need to know about all the complaints of assault. They need to be made aware of all of that, because there are complaints that come through about people having money taken from their homes and not being able to get their money returned. We know that legal weapons are taken from homes and not returned. We know that a lot of things are taken, and there's nothing that that individual signs off on when something computers. There's nothing that that individual signs off on so that they can go back and, prove that this was taken out of their home. So we hope that the state's attorney isn't only interested in quote unquote what's recovered, but what the complaints are about what's been taken, and, the assaults, sexual assault, standing naked, et cetera, et cetera. I'm kind of disappointed in the presentation by Tina, and I know Tina, and I trust her, but I don't think that it tells us what we need to know. And I hope we made some demands that there are town hall meetings with the Chicago Police Department where they explain just exactly what's supposed to happen when someone is driving with their weapon and they have their FOID cards and their CCLs and everything is in order. We want to end arbitrary arrest. We still stand firmly by Elijah and the fact that his arrest was arbitrary, absolutely unnecessary, and everything that happened to him was unnecessary. We do not like the systemic racism that we found within the court system, where it just immediately said that his weapon was going to be destroyed and not returned.
Thank you, Ms.
So we
Thank you, Ms.
really
Noel.
still
I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you, Ms. Noel. Our next speaker, Elijah Hudson.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello, everybody. This is Elijah Hudson. Once again, I introduced myself last week. I'm a city worker with the Metropolitan Water District. This is, first off, the presentation. I agree with Krista. I'm disappointed. It didn't really go into depth about procedures as far as what the officer should pretty much be saying to a citizen when they conduct the traffic stop, or the way they inquire in regards to CCLs. And it was pretty much glossed over. So I was expecting a lot more from that presentation. Also, I'm still in the process of trying to receive my firearm from the 18th district. The commander still hasn't signed off on it. The charges were dropped by the state's attorney. So that's clear that there was no reason for this case to even be brought against me or these charges. The judge, he told me that my firearm was being destroyed regardless of the fact that it was a legal firearm. So it's clear that CPD and the 29th branch are not operating under 430 ILCS, because I am not a threat to the public. I work for the city of Chicago. I'm an upstanding citizen. Why is my personal property being destroyed? Why am I not being returned my personal property? So at this point, we need to change the strategy, and there needs to be actual steps involved with relations, and not assuming because someone's Black with a firearm that there is some type of criminality associated with it. I'm totally upset with this, and I'm voicing my opinion, and I'm taking legal matters at this point because this is ridiculous. And I wonder how many of those firearms that's recovered are actually legal, like mine. I went, bought it, got cleared by the Illinois State Police. I've even been pulled over by federal cops before, and they still return my firearms. What is it with CPD where it's always a problem with them when it comes to Black men with the CCLs? Why can't there be a distinction between a criminal and a law-abiding citizen with a firearm? We need to find ways to make that distinction.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Robert Moore. Mr. Moore, if you can unmute one of your phones. Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore. All right. All members of the public who signed up to speak have been called. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Paula Wolf.
Yeah, second, Mike Weedy.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes and the meeting is adjourned. I wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season. Don't forget to wear your mask. A lot of respiratory viruses going around. Thank you so much. Happy New Year. See you all in the coming year. Thank you.